Hey, thanks for joining us. If you have ever watched 3 Random Records, or if you happen to know me or Steve or other people that work here, you would have heard of Audiomover before. Audiomover is a company where we take your old audio and video tapes and convert them into digital files. We've got a few of them here on this little table that we're going to talk about, give you some examples of some of the stuff that we do. It's kind of a big deal. There's, especially this time of year, interestingly, so we've been doing this business now since about 2000-ish, and every Christmas we get a lot of orders because people start thinking about what are they going to give for family members, and this is always a really popular gift where you go back and you find old audio tapes, old videotapes, and you convert them into digital files. And we'll see people do a lot of different interesting things with it. One of the coolest, I think, is when people have us take all their old videotapes, convert them into digital, and then put them on a tablet. And then make a bunch of tablets that they can give to people. And then, so you have all your old home movies on a tablet. You give these tablets out to people, and then they can just sit down with it, travel with it, do whatever they want, and then they can watch all the old stuff. And then you have, then everybody has a copy of it. You never really have to worry about losing it again because multiple people have them now. And so that's anyway, it's just something that comes up every time right around when we get into the holidays. It's a big deal. And so we wanted to make a little video here talking about that. And so we put a few of the things on the table here that we get a lot of. And probably the most common thing we do, which is kind of interesting, is these. You probably remember seeing these cassette tapes. Everybody's seen these things. These were really, really popular for obviously a long time.
And it was the mid-2000s, actually.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people stopped using them. Well, we get projects where people were still using them up until then.
Yeah.
A lot of people had at least from the music industry and the recording industry had moved on from these, back in the 90s. But yeah, people kept putting them out. It's kind of fascinating. But the nice thing, I've got labels. I don't know why I'm trying to take it off. We got labels all over this one. When tapes come in here, we actually put our own labels on them so that we keep track of stuff, because we literally, like this tape came from a project we did where we literally did 28,000 tapes for this client. And so we just pulled this one out of one of the boxes so we could show you. But we actually put labels on all the tapes that come in here so that we can, because we have so many that come in, to make sure that your tapes stay your tapes. As far as I know, in 20 years, we've never had the wrong tape for the wrong client.
No.
So, and we've literally moved, I couldn't even tell you how many tapes have moved through this little company. So it's kind of shocking. But this is one of the common things we do. We take these old cassette tapes, convert them into digital, make MP3 files, put them on a USB thumb drive, make CDs, that kind of thing. And so we get a lot of this stuff. And around Christmas, we get a lot of these things. And one of the things that was cool about this format was that it was one of the formats that allowed you to record your own stuff.
Your own voice.
So yeah,
voice of family. In fact, there's been a lot that I've done that were essentially kind of like a newer living letter, which we could talk about another time, which is another fun type. But there's some that I've done where they would mail the tape back and forth, and they would just record, and then they'd record their part up to a point, and then after that they would record their point, and they'd listen to it, and so they'd have this big long conversation that just happened over the mail. It was actually really cool. But that's I hear a lot where it's like grandma reading stories, and sometimes we get these things and they're the last bit of voice that they have from their family. I mean, you should tell them about the answering machine one that you did.
Yeah, this goes back, 7-8 years ago. We don't have one here. There were cassettes called micro cassettes, and they were even smaller than these, and they were used a lot in answering machines. If you had an answering machine back in the 80s or 90s, you'd remember these little tiny micro cassettes that you'd put in. And well, we get a lot of these things are very sentimental to people because they have their family family recordings and things. There was one that this microcassette showed up, and there was a letter in with the tape that said, this is, like, it said something like, these are the last words that we have, the only recorded words we have from our grandma. And it was on an answering machine. So in other words, this grandmother had called these people and left a message, and this was the only recording they had of her voice, was this answering machine. And it was something like 9 words. And it says, "Hey, Jenny and Tom, this is Grandma, love you, bye." And that was it. That was the whole thing. But this was priceless to them because it was that recording of their grandma. And so then they wanted to get this thing digitized so they could share it with everybody so they could remember what her voice was like. And getting back to what you said a minute ago, it's really fascinating how much of this stuff we get that is really literally family related recordings. And you're right, the recording stories where we'll have somebody that'll send in a whole bunch of tapes where they read books to their kids, and they just recorded them on these cassette tapes, and now they want to preserve them, and so then they send them into us, and then we make the MP3 files or WAV files or whatever you want. You kind of, it's also interesting. There's so many different topics we can go off here, but one of the things that Audiomover, so by the way, if you want to learn more about this, go to audiomover.com.
Not movers.
Not movers. That's actually a totally different company, unrelated, and we get mixed up between each other frequently. It's audiomover.com. And that's where you start orders. But where was I going with this?
Well, we were talking about just sometimes it's like the last living piece of their memory of loved ones, and we were talking about reading, how sometimes we get some where grandma has read a book or something specifically for the kids.
And because these things can be, you'll have these, once again, recordings of that, but it's everything. We'll get recordings of kids that are just playing with a tape machine 40 years ago. And they're just recording themselves. And so then you get to preserve these memories and then share them with your family. And once again, it becomes a really great Christmas present or any kind of present. We've had some of these things before where there was a funeral coming up. And they had a recording of something, and they just shot it over to us as fast as, overnighted it. And then we were able to convert it and then load it to them over Dropbox or Google Drive or something, so they'll have it for their event. But, that's what I was going to say. One of the things, because we've been in this business for so long, I mean, there's a bunch of businesses that started long after we did, but we've been doing this forever. And one of the things that we're able to do for you that some of these businesses that started after us can't is customization. And what I mean by that is, call us. We actually go to audiomover.com. There's phone numbers on there. You can call us and talk to us about what you have. Because what happens a lot is we'll get somebody, and it's very typical for somebody to call up that is 70 years old or 80 years old, no joke, because they're often the ones who have this stuff, and say, hey, I want to get this put on a such and such, and then we'll talk you through it and find out if that's really what you want. Because a lot of times you don't realize the other options that are available to you because you're not up on the things that are. And so we'll have somebody that literally is 70 years old and they want to get this for all their kids, and I tell them, okay, I see what you're trying to do. You don't want to get them what you think you want to get them. There's other formats that they're going to be able to use more than what you think. For example, we'll have people that are, once again, that are up in that age group that say, I want to get CDs made of a cassette, a whole bunch of copies for all my grandkids. And the first thing I'll say is, that sounds good, but you probably don't want CDs because your grandkids probably don't have a CD player or maybe don't even know what it is. And even though to you it seems normal, to them it doesn't. It's something like ancient history. And so there are other options, other things we can do for you that will help you help you reach your goal. So if you can call us and just tell us what you're trying to do, we'll talk you through it. So you're not just stuck looking at our website going, I think I'll check this, I think I'll click this. call us before you submit an order and just talk it through with us, because that goes for not just audio tapes but videotapes too. There's there's a lot of different things you may not be thinking about when you're submitting an order. Are you going to say something?
Well, as I was going to say, so the difference between like a DVD and MP4. So DVD, you're pretty limited, and you got to find a DVD player, and you got to find a DVD drive. Most laptops these days don't even have a CD drive for you to even play it on. And so MP4 is one of the most versatile video formats that we can not only put on a flash drive for you, but we can send it to a Dropbox. We can upload it to your Google Drive to where it's on a cloud, and you have it forever, as long as Google stays in power, which is probably never, that's always going to be a thing.
And the nice thing, to your point, is, you can, a lot of people do this where we'll send it to them over Dropbox or Google Drive or something, and then they'll just put it on a thumb drive, and they'll just keep that thumb drive on a shelf somewhere and maybe make a couple of copies of it. And like I said earlier, if you make a copy for everybody in your family, then there it is forever.
Yep.
And you really won't have to think about it again once it's in that digital format. And then everybody says, well, what's the next thing? Well, the nice thing about it is once it's in this digital format, if there's a new popular digital video format 20 years from now, it'll really be a matter of just, click it and it'll turn it into whatever the thing is. You've really... you don't have the same issues that you had with degradation previously, where... So, for example, if you recorded on this cassette tape some music, and then you take this same tape and you record it onto another tape, it degrades. It's pretty severely, actually, every single time. Where digital, it might degrade tiny, tiny bits because of compression, but it'll hardly be noticeable. It's a totally different thing. And so, like I said, you can call us and talk to us about it. We've been doing this for so long, don't have any trouble talking this stuff through.
Yeah.
So you know what you're getting and know what you're trying to get.
Well, copying a digital file it's an exact copy. So whatever that copy is, it's going to sound exactly like.
Yeah, if you're just dragging and dropping something.
Yeah.
From a hard drive to a hard drive, there will literally be no difference between the two. No degradation in quality, nothing.
And that's the benefit, I think, if you're looking about coming in and looking at anything that you want to get digitized, keep it in a digital format, because you can do a lot more with it. It's going to last longer, and to be honest, it's cheaper. I mean, it's our cheaper option. I don't know if I should say that, but it is our cheaper option.
Yeah, well, another thing that's a little different about us is some of these other companies that do this work even their pricing's not customized. No. I mean, there's a real famous one right now that sends you a box, and you get to put X number of tapes in that box, whatever they are, and it's going to be 2 or 3 times more than we would ever charge you. Yep. And anyway, once again, we actually work with you to get you what you want, how you want it, and you can just talk to us about it. And it's kind of interesting because we can talk about some of these other formats. This is one that most people will probably know. This is just a standard VHS tape.
Get a lot of these.
Of course, that was, back in the 80s and early 90s, this was the video format. As far as, especially if you bought a movie, there really wasn't another video format that was used really at all as far as mass production of movies that you would buy.
Remember when
at a store.
E.T. came out? It was like $300 for a copy.
No, but that doesn't surprise me.
Some of the first VHSs, they were ridiculous for a copy.
Yeah. So and anyway, some of you, the older people, even remember this. So that's our VHS, and this is the Betamax. Flip them so they're kind of the same.
And so for your newer kids, well, newer being maybe about my age, this is HD DVD versus Blu-ray all over again. Well, actually, older, and then it happened again.
Where one of them ended up running the other one out.
And this is the HD DVD.
Yeah, so this was the... So it's kind of interesting the way this worked, and as I recall, this format, which we haven't pulled out, which is called U-matic, was really the original videotape, and it was made by Sony. Then Sony moved to this thing called a Betamax, and it had some very important problems. And one of the main things was it only would record a certain amount of time, and it didn't give you, at least the original one, I don't think you gave you variables as far as how much the speed changes. Where then the VHS was this generic thing that had more tape, it allowed you to record more time, and it just ended up being much more versatile. And so then the Sony Betamax, because it was less versatile, just disappeared and VHS took over.
But didn't the Betamax actually have better quality?
Supposedly. Supposedly it actually had better quality, and I don't know that there's... But where it did... I'll tell you what happened that made it have... why some people say that it had better quality, and I'll show you something. So I'm going to move this, put this back in. So this is the VHS. I'm going to move this out of the way. Because what a lot of people don't know, and this is where some of the misunderstandings come with this stuff, is there was another format that came out that was based on the size. Now, if you look at this, you're going to see something that looks almost identical. Actually, I mean, you look at the front, the back,
same size, yeah.
Everything about it's the same size. But what's interesting is this will not play in a machine that plays this, and this will not play in a machine that plays this.
Thanks,
even though they're exactly the same sizes, you can put this in one of these machines and it'll play. You just won't see anything. Same thing. And it'll actually try to do it, but it won't work. And here's the reason that we talk about one having higher quality than the other. This is called Betacam SP, and it's made by Sony. And it is the same box, the same everything, but it's a different type of tape. And so this is considered a professional grade videotape, where this is a consumer grade. The Betamax was consumer grade. So as this disappeared, the Betamax, the Betacam actually took over the professional videotape world. And here's the other thing that a lot of people don't realize. The Betacam SP actually had two different sizes. This is so cool. I wish we had the machine out here to show you. But
this and heavy.
This is a Betacam SP tape, which is actually the exact same format as this tape. These two things are exactly the same, except this is much, much longer. But believe it or not, they play in the same machine. Mm-hmm. So you can put these two tapes in the exact same machine, and they both work. When you watched television in the 80s, 90s, and probably early 2000s.
Until they went digital. Yeah.
Until everything went digital. And then there was actually a digital version of this, which is the exact same thing again.
Oh yeah, it looks exactly, that's right.
Same everything about it. It's called digital beta. So this is Betacam SP. If you watch TV 80s, 90s, early 2000s, there's a good chance you were watching, somebody was on at a station putting one of these tapes in and hitting play, and then it broadcast to your home. And then to your point, Sony came out with the next one, which is DigiBeta, which was the exact same thing. And now they don't use tapes anymore.
Just a hard drive.
But it was, and that right there, this is interesting since we have this out. So these two are the same, the Betacam SP. This was the original videotape.
U-matic.
Right here, this is called U-matic. And this is, once again, I believe Sony made this.
Which I want to point out.
And so... can you cancel that?
Yeah, we got
somebody's
a phone
calling.
Oh, it might be actually somebody calling about something. I want to point out too, the U-matic tape is incredibly heavy. You look at that thing, the thing's like a brick.
Yeah, these are all because they're also known as, I think, 3/4-inch tape, and everything about it's bigger. Mm-hmm. And even the tapes, it's weird watching because the tapes actually turn the opposite direction. They're all squirrely.
Oh God!
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, I wish I don't know.
That'd be really cool.
I know I could tell you all that stuff on audio tape, but I don't know on videotape. But this goes back. I think these originally came out in the late '60s, early '70s. So if you were going to, and this actually was a broadcast standard going back into the '80s and '90s too. Sometimes when you were watching television, this is the kind of tape that they were using to broadcast off of back. Even during the time this was, because this was always still considered a broadcast in a professional standard since the day it came out.
Well,
so this was
to like the 60s.
Yeah, I think the late 60s is when those came out. And once again, this was replaced by this and this.
So what did they use on television before tape? I'm actually
I don't know. It
Could
could have
they-
been
would
open
have been
reels.
open
Yeah,
reel?
I'm not sure what they would have used
Thank you.
to broadcast. I don't know.
And see, and then the last digital type of tape that we had was this. This is a mini DV. I thought it'd be fun to show you the
Right.
size difference. And these, you could get 90 minutes, I think was the most you could get out of one of these guys. But this has impeccable quality and about the same time that would have been on one of these little tapes.
Yeah, and they had an interesting thing about those. Those were considered consumer grade tapes, but they did have something called DV cam format, which was supposedly a professional type format, which you would get. It would play faster, and so you wouldn't be able to get as much recording on the tape. But it also, if your tape player won't play DV cam, then it won't read that tape anymore. So there is a different format that you can get with those But that's right. That probably was the last digital tape format that came out, because there was a couple of different. Because Sony actually had their own another digital, the high 8 and they had an 8mm high 8 and then digital 8,
That's
which
right,
was
digital.
just prior to this.
And then the mini
So-
DV came out. Kind of
Yeah.
had a short-lived
Well, I'll tell you
lifespan.
something. It was one of the. It may have had good quality, but it was one of the most, in my opinion, unstable, horrible formats ever created. I hated it. I worked with it a lot, and the tape heads would go out real easily on even good players, and
It just
I was
wasn't good
never a fan of
technology.
that thing. It was terrible. Which one did this go in? Was this Umatic?
No, I have the Umatic.
Oh, you have the Umatic.
That one.
Anyway, so it's kind of interesting just looking at this, but this was all Sony. They originally came out with the Umatic, then they ended up, then they had the Betamax, and then the Betacam SP, and then they did have those other formats, Video 8, High 8, Digital 8, which were all, I believe Sony developed all those things originally, and then those became video formats. And those were never used for broadcast. Those were more camcorder. They're about the same size as a cassette tape, roughly. A little thicker, just a little bit larger, but sometimes they're mistaken for cassette tapes because we will get people shipping them in and say they're a cassette tape, and we go, actually, no, this is a videotape. And so, because they're for somebody that doesn't pay attention to this stuff like we do, it's easy to mistake some of this stuff for each other.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's kind of interesting history, and so we move, but I guess also the point is we can play all this stuff. So if you have any of this stuff, because a lot of people will have a Betacam SP tape that maybe they were an actor, or they have a newsreel, or they had something that was on TV. We'll get that kind of thing where they had, for some reason, they were featured in a news story at one point, and then the TV station gave them a tape, and they'll give them this, and they don't have anything to play it on, but they have the original master, and then they can. And then you can send that into us, and we have the players to play those things and digitize them for you. So, but getting back to the original stuff, so let's see here. There's our Betamax.
Yeah,
Here's our
Betacam.
Betacam SP.
Well, and there's even other formats that we didn't bring out of both audio and video that we can do that I just don't think we had any examples of, like DAT tapes. DAT tapes were huge in the 90s, and because that was what kind of switched over. A lot of people started switching over from sound reels, correct, and tapes, and they switched to
people
digital
thought,
audio
that's
tape.
right, because what would happen is people in recording studios would, whenever they're mixing down the music from the original recordings, like the multi-track tape, they'd record it onto either a half-inch tape, which was often what your master was, or in the 90s, DAT, or digital audio tape, became the thing that people would use to master their audio onto. And a lot of people thought that DAT tape was going to move in and take over the consumer world of cassette tape, because it sounded way, way better than cassette tapes. Cassette tapes were never, when they were developed, they were never really intended to have music. And part of the reason, boy, we can get off in the weeds with this in a pretty big way, but part of the problem with cassette tape, once again, this is what we're talking about here, which a lot of people have seen, is that you have a very limited frequency range. So I don't know exactly where it is, but it rolls off. I think it'll go down to maybe like 100 hertz, and then it'll go, then it comes up, and then right as about the time I think it gets to 12,000 or 13,000 hertz, then it starts rolling off, and it won't really record anything above that. So a dog whistle, for example, if you record it onto a tape, it wouldn't be able to play it back because it won't record something that's that high. So it was never intended to be, when they first made it, it was not supposed to be for music, it was supposed to be for voice, because the human voice, most of it just sits in that 500 to 800 hertz range. Now, those sounds and that kind of thing gets really a lot higher than that, but most of what you're hearing just when we speak is really low. So when this goes up to maybe 12,000 hertz, that seems like, okay, but you think that human hearing, when you have good hearing, especially when you're a young kid and a teenager before you get old like me, you can hear up to 20,000 hertz or 20K, which is what you'll often see it written as. And this can't play that back or record it. And so, but something like a DAT tape has the ability to get that because of the sampling rate, which I could go.
The sampling rate might be a whole other
crazy
video.
Explaining how all this stuff works, but this is so a DAT tape had two different sampling rates. One of them was 44.1 and one of them was 48. And in digital audio recording today, those are still kind of the standards that people use, although some people are now going up to 96K. And the just a brief overview on what that all means is if your sampling rate is 44.1 or 44,100 samples per second, if your frequency that you're hearing is 20,000 hertz, which is 20,000 waves a second, then you have a sample, if it's 44, at just over twice per wave. So digital audio is trying to reproduce that wave that music or audio makes. And so what digital audio does is it tries to create all these little samples and then fill in the blanks. And so in order to recreate those really high frequencies, you have to have this really high sampling rate because the frequency moves so fast that you have to have so many samples so quickly to try to create a nice curve. Anyway, we should show this on a screen and it would make more sense. But that's
really cool to do.
But that's the point. Yeah, it would be cool to show how this stuff works. But anyway, but cassette tapes. That's why people thought the DAT tape was going to take over. And so a lot of people in the 90s, if you recorded in studios, they stopped moving from reel-to-reel half-inch tape as a master, and they went to this thing called DAT, which some people thought was going to be moved into the consumer field. There was an attempt, and then it never really worked. DAT tapes are pretty close to this size, roughly, when you see them. They're slightly larger, but they're similar to that. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say you can blame the compact disc. And it came down to the fact that the compact disc was kind of like the VHS. Well, actually, the DAT tape can actually hold a lot more, but it came down to convenience. You don't have to rewind a compact disc. And even though the sound quality on it, the wave is, not bad, it wasn't nearly as good.
Yeah, so the lowest sampling rate on a DAT and a CD were exactly the same. The highest, the 48, which is what the DATs would do, that's what made the DAT slightly better quality than the CD, but it wasn't enough that anyone would ever hear.
Yeah.
No human being could really hear, I don't think, the difference in quality between a CD and a DAT. And they tried to make it convenient because if you ever rewind or fast forward a DAT tape, it is fast as heck.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you can go 2 hours of audio on that tape and inside of maybe 30 seconds, fast forward it to the end and rewind to the back. It's very fast. And it has the ability to go locate. So if you wanted to go to track 10, and it just, and it would be there. But for some reason, I often thought that that it was the convenience factor, but I always thought a little bit that people liked, because when the CD came out, it was enough like a record.
Oh yeah.
That people felt comfortable with it,
So it was a
even though it
comfortable
was
factor,
easier to
maybe.
destroy it.
Yeah, no, yeah, true.
Because you could scratch those things up so easily because all of the stuff was exposed, where a DAT, it was hit, kind of inside the tape or inside the housing, and you couldn't mess with it.
But if that thing snaps, it is a pain.
Oh my gosh,
to
DAT
fix.
tapes are such a pain to fix, just like the mini DVs.
It has the same kind of idea of the way that a VHS tape works, with kind of like magnets, right?
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, helical or something. I can't remember what the word is, but they have this spinning drum, and the tape kind of winds around it. I don't understand the technology, but when you look at it, it is very similar to how a VHS tape works. Similar idea.
And we can repair DATs, but oh my, it might take a minute.
Yeah, they are painful. And the other thing is, even though CDs were more volatile in that you could scratch them up very easily, if you left a CD in its case forever, it would be fine 20 years later. Where a DAT tape, because we have a lot of DAT players here, having digitized or copied a bunch of these over for people, a lot of DATs do not age well. So we'll get DAT tapes. Some of them are great. We'll get DAT tapes in here that run and no problem. And we do actually a digital to digital transfer. We do not run it through an analog signal. So in other words, when if you send us in a DAT tape, you're getting zeros and ones across the board. You're getting a pure copy of the DAT tape. We don't convert it to analog when it comes back, and then back into digital. It's a straight copy. But because of that, if the tape has deteriorated at all, you'll get digital noise sometimes in there,
yeah.
which sadly is unavoidable. Now, most of the time, 99% of the time, even if that does happen, it's very infrequent. In other words, if you have a 2-hour-long tape, it might only happen one time in the tape, and it will happen weirdly at the spot where the tape had been stored.
So usually right at the beginning if it was fully rewound.
So if it was around all the way, you probably never hear it. But if it was stored like 10 minutes into the tape, that one spot where it sat in the little loop, that little spot is now kind of molded almost into that little bend. Yeah. And then you'll get it as it comes across that spot. So that's the only thing we've ever... But some of these tapes deteriorated terribly, and they just don't last. And then others of them... And I couldn't tell you which brands work better than others. I don't know that I've paid close attention to which, but some of them do great, and some of them just don't. So we've even had some in recent weeks where one of the tapes came out kind of rough in a couple spots, while all their other tapes were just pristine all the way through. So it's kind of hard to tell. So those digital tape formats, in my opinion, were great for a few minutes, for a few years, and then they just boom. Those mini DV tapes were great while they worked, and then until they weren't, and then they were awful. And so I guess the point, once again, we're Audiomover, audiomover.com. If you have any of this stuff and you need to get it digitized, the point with all this stuff is none of it is gonna last forever. And I should have showed you something. Check this out. I noticed this as we pulled them out. This doesn't happen on all tapes, but this is something kind of interesting, and it's called photo degradation. Now, look at the back, look at the reels on these two tapes.
Oh yeah, I noticed that.
Notice the one on the left, or my left, and then notice one on the right. I don't know if you can see this in the cameras at all. Are either of these cameras, can they see the table?
No, but I had moved this one before when you were showing stuff on the table.
Yeah, you should see if we can capture that. You'll notice that this one, the reels are yellow, and this one they're white. Now, these almost certainly were white originally. And then you've seen that kind of thing before where over time plastic yellows. And it's called photo degradation. And it's oftentimes caused by just light. Over years and years, just light touching it. But it's not always light, although it's called, once again, as far as I understand, it's photo degradation is what it's called. It can be caused by just aging. It can be caused by changes in temperature, different things like that. And what's happening as it gets yellow is it's becoming brittle. So so that's one of the reasons why, especially if you have any tapes that you see that yellowing, you got to get them digitized quick.
As soon as possible.
Because what's going to happen in this is those reels are going to break. Now, they probably won't break in our care unless they waited a few more years. They might.
Yeah,
but
we're getting close on those.
but this is the kind of thing that we're always watching out for, because people are sending this stuff in and it's just getting old. And so if you've got this stuff, Christmas is coming up, be a great Christmas present, and the clock is ticking on how well these things are going to age. So if you're smart, you will go grab those things out of your basement or garage or closet or wherever they are right now, or call your mom and dad, who probably have them sitting somewhere, all the recordings of when you were kids, and get this done now.
As soon as possible.
Yeah, because
seriously.
it's just not worth waiting anymore until you get to the point where you send them into us, and then we're going through all these repairs and trying to get the thing to function for you. Just, you don't want to mess with that stuff. Just get them to us before they start doing this. And once they start doing this, it really is just a matter of time. And this one, I don't know if we've digitized this one yet.
We actually.
But you can see this.
Let's see, which one's this one?
Oh yeah, that one's already been done.
Yeah. So that one's been done. Because that was, luckily that went through the Betacam, which is a little more delicate.
Betacam SP, yeah.
Which is a more delicate machine. Had it just gone through the regular Betamax, that thing could have snapped.
Yeah, because the consumer machines, just the way they are, they were a Betacam SP machine it's a pro machine. Like I said, we've got that stuff back in the back where we digitize this stuff. But yeah, they're, as you can imagine, a machine that they play that's going to be on your local television station is going to be much, much higher quality than the one that you put in your front room.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. It's not a consumer thing. They create these machines that play these tapes because this is something that's being broadcast to millions of people, and it's pro level, et cetera, et cetera. But still, even so, they're susceptible to the same plastic, issues of different polymers. And some polymers, and who knows? I mean, I don't know anything about plastic other than the word polymer, but different polymers, which are just different formulas of plastic, age better than others. And who knows what the chemical, what is going on in there that causes that to some last better than others. I don't know. It's similar to tape. If you've ever seen a piece of Scotch tape that you put on 30 years ago, and then you go pull it out of a drawer or something and you find this and the tape just kind of flakes off, same idea. Just over time, not much you can do about it. It just, these are all petroleum-based products, and over time they just deteriorate. And like your tires on your car.
Yeah.
You get a tire that, what is it, 10 years? Something like that. Once a tire reaches a certain age, they won't repair it.
Yeah, that's just
because
too dangerous.
even if there's plenty of tread, they won't repair it because the polymers, the rubber, the plastic that's in the tire is deteriorated to the point that it's not safe anymore. And so that's why you want to be always putting motorcycles, always want to have new tires on their bikes, because if you're going to lose a tire you don't want to, lose a tire on a motorcycle ever.
Yeah, not on a motorcycle.
And so, but same thing with cars, from a safety standpoint, they won't even, you go into a tire repair store, and if that tire's over a certain age, they're not going to fix it for you. Because for the same reason, the same thing. It's the same issue with these tapes. They get past a certain age, you gotta get them digitized.
Yeah.
It's similar to your car. That tire gets past a certain age, get rid of that tire, replace it with a better one. Get rid of this tape and replace it with a thumb drive where you've got everything that's on this tape on that thumb drive or on that tablet. Don't waste any more time waiting for this stuff to just get older and older and older, because it's not going to last.
To that point, we just had some tapes come in that were from like the 90s, and it was a bigger project, but it took me 2 days. I repaired about 90 cassette tapes. And now the biggest issue, we talked about the tape. And so there's two pieces of tape. If anybody remembers any cassette tapes, I'll see if I can rewind it enough here to where there it is. I don't know how well you can see that on the camera. I'll point it at that camera, but you can see the black tape, which is where the information is stored, and then you see the kind of clear tape, which is known as the leader tape. Is that getting on there? So that leader tape and that black tape are only held together by a small piece of tape. That's it. It's a small piece of tape behind it. And after time, that adhesive just goes away. And most of my repairs were just putting a new piece of tape back on those tapes. And so it's something that we can repair, but it just takes more time and it's going to cost more money. So the sooner you get them in, the less chance that you're going to have with that. Another thing that we do are reel-to-reel tapes. And one of the saddest things that can happen to those when they're not stored well, they just turn into a big brick. And that can also happen with cassette tapes that are stored very improperly, usually with a lot of heat, a lot of cold, to where I go to play the tape and it'll just shatter because it's plastic. And over time, these plastics, especially when they're worked through heat, cold, they just deteriorate and they fall apart and they get to this point where they become so brittle they're just useless. So if you do have these things stored like in your attic and it's not temperature control, get them out of there. I'm going to tell you that right now. Put them under your bed, put them where the temperature is controlled, because first of all, get them to us. But if you can't do that right now, get them out of those places. I think that would be the best thing to do. Yeah.
What happens? You have the issue that you just talked about, where it will literally fuse onto itself. The oxide tape will fuse together, and you'll just end up with, like you described it, a brick. There's two other things that can go wrong with those tapes too. One of them is that from sitting stored for a really long time, sitting in that spot, the tape itself will warp just ever so slightly. I mean, imagine, it doesn't even have to be much. A tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of a warp in a tape, when it goes from this reel over to this reel, because it's warped just slightly, where it laid flat over here, now when it tries to take up on another reel, as it goes thousands of times in this spin, it offsets itself just slightly, and that little warp makes that tape, which is that thick, that thick. And so all this tape that fit on this reel 45 minutes ago will not fit over here now. And so now you end up cutting it in half, getting a whole new reel. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So because it warps, just because from sitting there, so you got to get this stuff taken care of. The other thing that'll happen is that the polymer that holds the oxide tape that the audio gets recorded on, that stuff, once again, becomes brittle. And we've had tapes before that literally every foot, it just breaks. It's so brittle that it becomes really, you just can't even use it. It's useless. Now that's pretty rare that it gets to the point that that there's nothing at all we can do. That's not common. It is common for that to happen in the first 20 feet, where we just go, we literally just have to cut off the first 20 feet of this tape. It's either so warped and it's breaking every few inches that we can't do anything with it. But it just gets worse over time. So if you have reel-to-reel tapes, same thing. Yeah. None of this stuff ages well. All of it is going to, over time, is going to fall apart and die. And so you just don't want to wait any longer and get this stuff to us. And so it's, once again, it's audiomover.com. That's the website, and that's the name of our company. And all I can tell you, there's other companies that do this that probably do more business and have more money and more, financial investors and all this stuff. The difference between us and every other company that does this is the fact that this is a passion here.
Yeah.
I started this little company because I am passionate about this stuff. I started working in recording studios when I was 15 years old. I mean, this was 1984. So I am so nuts for some crazy reason about this technology that we have standards that we go by, and we're careful and we understand what's going on here. And this is not just a bunch of what do we say? Kids that have no idea what they're looking at here. I mean, everybody that comes through here gets training on what all this stuff means.
I make sure
if
of
you
it.
don't know, if you don't really understand it, you're gonna understand it. And we really are passionate about what this is, and we understand it. I better than the other people on these other companies working on your stuff, because it's been something that the guy that started this and owns this place, it's something that I've been passionate about since I was a kid, and I've grown up with this, and I still surround myself with it because I love it so much. And so it's an important. So everybody that comes in here and everybody that works here understands that it's something that we do out of love, not just because it's profitable. Where every other company, hey, this is a great business idea. For us, it was hey, here's something that needs to be done. And it happens to be a good business idea on top of it. It was opposite from everybody else. And so we've worked with people, and actually some really amazing organizations around the country, historical projects. I mean, some of the stuff that's come through here, the C.S. Lewis Foundation stuff was so crazy. But I mean,
really cool.
we even did, who was the vice president? We did all of their Hubert Humphrey. We did a whole bunch of historical recordings of people being interviewed about Hubert Humphrey. I mean, you're talking
Amazing
about
stories.
Some of these people that were on these tapes. These are original tapes of recordings of Colin Powell was one of them.
Colin Powell, senators.
I mean, just Hillary
members.
Clinton was in there, and
that's
all
right.
all these really original tape recordings of these people talking on these specific topics. And I mean, we could go on for a long time talking about some of these amazing artists. I mean, we've done stuff for Grammy Award-winning artists before, musicians that had all their stuff digitized, audio and videotapes. Heck, we've had videotapes, home movies from Grammy Award-winning artists, believe it or not. I mean, it's really cool. And we also are very careful. All of our video machines are internet isolated. In other words, they have no connection to the internet. So there's everything you send in here is perfectly private, perfectly secure. So, I mean, once again, we take this really seriously. We've been doing this for a really long time, and you can trust us to get a good job done with your stuff. And so if you have audio and videotapes you need digitized, and if you don't, you know somebody that does, I guarantee you. Because there were literally billions of these things made. There's so many of these that out there that nobody in their lifetime could digitize all this stuff.
No.
But we're here to help for the people that actually care, the people that really, that value these things. We're here to help with that. And you can go to audiomover.com and start an order there. There is what I think is a fairly simple ordering process to get it started. Yeah. But if you have trouble with it, just call. Matter of fact, there's been people before that go, I'm having trouble, I don't understand which thing. I'll just help you set up the order over the phone. We'll just get it set up and put in there, and we'll give you your order number, and then you ship it in. And the other thing to keep in mind when you're creating an order is, well, what if I find something later that, when I'm going back through my boxes, if there's something else, so just don't worry about it. Just send it in. When you're ordering with us, we don't charge you up front. You actually send it in, we finish it, and then we bill you. So if you find more tapes, we'll just notice them when they come. And we've actually had people pay for things or put in things in their order that they shouldn't have added. For example, many times, this sounds so crazy, but many times we've actually had people send in cleaning tapes that aren't really tapes.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll have their VHS cleaner shows up, and they think it's a VHS tape. And if we'd have charged you up front, you would have paid for us to digitize your cleaner. So once again, and it just it's a natural thing. You just pull everything out of your box and send it. But once again, we'll notice all those things, and you won't get charged more than you're supposed to, and we'll take care of you. And that's I guess maybe the message here.
We'll take care of you. Is
that we'll get this stuff taken care of, and you'll end up with something that you can be happy with. And then we do keep everything backed up so once you send it here, we digitize it. We keep a backup copy of everything for a certain amount of time, and so that you can get it back, make sure it's okay, and then after a certain amount of time, then we delete it. But we do hold on to this stuff for a while, so that you have plenty of time to get everything through the mail. And then the other thing people worry about is the mail. Don't worry about the mail. We've moved so many things through the mail. It's unbelievable. If you package it up well, if you put it in a decent box and you put enough tape around it, you really don't have anything to worry about.
And if you're really worried, just put your name on each tape.
Yeah.
With like a little address label. Put it on each tape. We've had people do that, and it's completely fine. And I don't think it's necessary. Because like he said, we trust the mail, and like we have had a few problems, but it's always made it back one way or the other.
And the problems we have are so minimal. And here's the thing, we've talked with all the different shipping companies about this because the most common phone call we get is, God, I'm just afraid of putting something in the mail. This is irreplaceable. So we've talked to all the shipping companies, FedEx, UPS, DHL, Post Office, and they all have the same thing. Look, just tell people, put their contact information on the item inside the box. So in other words, if you have a VHS tape like this, put your name and address on the tape and then put it in the box. Why do you do that? Well, here's why. Because each of these companies has a policy to get things back to people if there's a catastrophic event. So let's say, God forbid, the post office truck is driving down the road and it gets hit. It hits a moose, and the truck flips over, and things go flying everywhere. Boxes get torn open. They gather up everything, and if they find a tape that has your name on it, you're getting it back. That's it. It's that simple. Yeah. And which, by the way, the moose accident factor is so limited, so rare that you don't really have to worry about that. If that's happening, oh my gosh. But
if that's happening, you're probably in Alaska or Canada.
There you go. So, but the point is, all the different shipping companies have the same policy that if there's some sort of a catastrophic event, if they can identify who it belongs to, it'll get back to you. So worst case scenario, just put your contact information on your tape, and let's say the tape explodes somewhere and tapes go flying everywhere. Well, the post office gathers them all up and they go, okay, these belong to the Hansons that live in Ohio, and then they just get them back to you. That's it. And so like I said, it's so, when you consider how many packages have moved through our little company and how rare, it's lightning strike level thing. It's almost lottery level.
Yeah, it's level.
When you get to that point, because it's so rare that there's an issue. The worst things that happen are not the packages. It's this. It gets to our facility here, and it gets delivered to the next door neighbor.
Yeah.
And like, oh, this is yours. I mean, that's kind of the worst. And everybody has that kind of stuff happen. I mean, you probably have had that happen with an Amazon package before, so, but I mean, even that, I don't even remember the last time that happened. I'm just telling you what's the worst stuff that happens is it's like the neighbor ends up with the box.
Well, sometimes, like if it's not packaged well, if you don't put enough padding, like the cases may break a little.
They might break. Yeah. I mean, we've had that happen.
That's it. I mean, a cassette tape itself is very robust, and most of these are, fall in the same vein. So especially if they're in a case and you've got some sort of bubble wrap, they're going to be fine. I mean, well, sometimes people don't even use bubble wrap. They just use newspaper, and it still gets here just fine.
We had one of my most interesting stories with a cassette tape. Years ago, somebody sent one of these in a number 10 envelope. Now, if you know what that is, that's just, like what you put your bills in. No padding, nothing. Put a tape in a number 10 envelope, licked it, sealed it shut, address. When it arrived at the studio, it literally did look like a truck would run over it. I mean, it was broken, busted up in a bunch of pieces, but all we had to do, take the tape out, set it in a new housing, seal it up, and it played fine. So, I mean, there's so little that you have to worry about with this stuff. It's crazy. Even if this thing gets utterly destroyed in the process and get hits with a hammer and run over with a steamroller, we can get it to play. It's really not a problem. And so you have so little to worry about from a shipping standpoint.
And as far as repairs go, we've actually literally had somebody send us basically ribbons in a plastic bag with a completely shattered tape housing, and that was like one of the first things I did for you when I first started working for you. And
interesting.
I think I spent most of the day getting it back into a reel and getting it back into a housing, and it played just fine.
Yep. Yeah, we do get some crazy stuff like that where they got stuck in their tape player, and that's why they sent it to us. And so they pulled out all the tape, and you got this big pile of garbage. But we can get them to work. there's just, once again, the point is you just don't have much to worry about. You go on our website, audiomover.com, get an order started. All you're really doing when you get that order started is you're just getting an order number. And then that way, when it arrives here, then we track it. So when it arrives here, we that number is how we track your order. So we can tie that number back to your name, your address, et cetera, and then when we ship it back, it's all under this number. So when you start an order at audiomover.com, all you're really doing is just generating a number for us to track it. You can be completely wrong in everything. You can say you have 10 VHS tapes when you really have 10 DAT tapes. It won't matter, because when it gets here, we're going to see what you have, and we'll probably call you and say, these don't look like VHS. This looks like, we'll tell you that something went wrong when you were ordering it, but it doesn't matter on this end. That's what we use to contact and communicate with you and to track the order once it gets in here. And you can see, in this case, and you can't see it from there, but we generate, once again, codes that go with every single thing that comes through here that ties back to you. And then that's how we make sure that as we have all these different tapes, we could literally take all the projects that are sitting in here right now and throw all the tapes in a big pile, and within an hour have everything back to the correct order because of how we track the things through here. By the way, we don't do that, but you could literally do that in here, and we won't get anything mixed up with what belongs to who.
In fact, for the most part, every single thing that comes in here, we have a lot of totes, and it gets its own tote.
Yeah.
So we separate it as much as we can from everything else. Plus, a lot of times, I'm going to be the one doing your smaller projects, and I am very careful and very meticulous. And I love this job because I like getting to preserve history of all kinds. And so like Robert had mentioned earlier, it's a passion. And so I take it very seriously, and I also am very careful, because I can't tell you how many times I get one tape, and in that tape is a sticky note or a letter, and it says, "This is all I've got of this person," and I can understand that. And growing up, we didn't have a lot of things to record a lot of. We had pictures, just because my family didn't have a lot of money. But I see it the same as that. My father passed away when I was very young. I have like 3 pictures of him. That's all I've got. And if I could have like a little bit of a recording of his voice, I'd be ecstatic. And so I think about that. I think about how I can relate it to myself every time I do one of these projects, because I know on the other end, that's exactly what you guys are thinking, is this is all I've got, and I want to preserve their memory as long as I can.
Yeah, that's great. So it is a passion for us here. So once again, it's Audiomover, audiomover.com, not Audiomovers. It's audiomover.com. And that's, you can get an order started. There's a few phone numbers on there. You can call, and I think my cell phone might even be on there somewhere.
It is.
Is it? Yeah, just call. We're happy to talk your project through with you. We also work with big organizations, for example, churches or government agencies. The biggest project we ever did, we did for the state of New Mexico, and it was 115,000. Yes, you heard that right. 115,000 cassette tapes. And so we can help you, if you have a bulk order like that, figure out the best solution. Churches a lot of times notoriously have thousands of tapes of sermons that they did for 20 years. And just call us, and we'll come up with a custom proposal. We do these all the time. We can come up with a custom proposal that helps you get where you're trying to get. Because a lot of churches, they want to do something. For example, they want to get all these digitized and put them online to sell. Mm-hmm. Or it's some pastor that everybody loved that was in that congregation that preached from 1980 to 1994 before he passed away, and they just want to put these on their website and make them available. And so we'll help you. So they'll call us up and say, "Hey, that's our goal. What do you think?" And we'll say, "Okay, well, here's what we would do," and then we'll help you get that goal achieved. We've actually helped people actually build the websites to put those files on. And so, I mean, we've done all of this stuff before. We've actually had one church not long ago that was putting them on their state's historical something. I can't remember what it was, but they had very specific formats that they needed everything in order to do that. We can take care of it. So you just call and say, hey, this needs to be a WAV file and this setting and this and this. No sweat. Got you covered. And like I said, there's probably even things you hadn't thought about before that once we start explaining to you, that'll help you from an organization standpoint, help you understand how to name your files in a way that will help you keep track of what you're looking at.
Keep them organized.
Yeah. So there's like I said, there's probably a bunch of things you never even occurred to you, but we've been doing this for so long and we've been so successful with it. We can help you if you got one tape or if you literally have 100,000 tapes. We can get it done for you and get it done in a way that helps you accomplish whatever your goal is. Just communicate with us about it and we will help you make that happen. Mm-hmm. So anyway, all right, maybe is there anything else you want to add to all this craziness?
Well, no, not for the Audiomover, I guess. I mean, really just keep in mind that Christmas is coming up. You know, you've got about a month and a half now. Well, not quite 2 months, but if you've got anything you want to get done and make sure you get it before Christmas, get it to us as soon as possible.
Yeah, really. We actually, when our office used to be in Denver, there was one project, I remember one year, where this lady at the last minute, she was in New York. She had, I think, 8 reel-to-reel tapes that she wanted to do for her husband, and this was, I think, 3 days before Christmas, and we still pulled it off, where it was this overnighting thing. I remember, I think it was December 23rd, I'm at a UPS store at 6 o'clock at night, you know, boxing these things up. I think it cost, I mean, it was the amount they charged overnight, it was like $150 or something. We still did it, but yeah, don't wait. Christmas is coming up. This is a great idea to do for Christmas, and just get on it.
Yeah.
Don't wait any longer to do something like this. And it's a fun gift. Every year we do these things, and it's a really cool gift. And once again, we do this work. We've done every state in the Union and Canada and a few people in Europe. Mm-hmm. And so send it in from wherever. We can take care of it. We have, I think, exceeded 100 different cities in California alone that people have shipped things in for. So even though we're located in southern Utah, in St. George, Utah, that's where our studio is, we get stuff shipped in from all over the country. And once it gets here, doesn't leave. We don't ship things over to China to have them do the digitizing, nothing like that. It stays right here. And once it hits our studio, it's here and it's safe and we get it done. And then once we've digitized it, you got nothing to worry about after that because we already have it here and backed up. We'll ship you the tapes back. And even if they get hit by a tornado and nuclear bomb, we already have your tapes digitized and backed up here. So you won't have to worry about it. All you got to do is get them here. And then you're taken care of, and that's it.
Well, and I mean, we're right off the I-15 corridor. So honestly, even if you're just passing by and you don't trust the mail, drop them off.
Some people have. I mean, we actually get people from Salt Lake actually just stop in.
Yeah, just drop them off.
Salt Lake and Mesquite. Mm-hmm. And even Las Vegas, you know, people traveling back and forth because we are, you know, and LA's on the same path and all the way up to Canada. Mm-hmm. But we are on that, just off that freeway, only a couple of minutes. And so you're more than welcome to do that. But 99% or more of the stuff that comes in here, it's all mailed. Yeah. So, matter of fact, we actually got contacted a couple of days ago. Somebody here in St. George is mailing something to us. So, it's you know, just mail. So don't worry about the mail. Don't worry about the mail.
Don't worry about the mail.
Yes, there's always a chance that some horrifying, awful thing's going to happen. But once again, we've been doing this for a long, long time, and we just don't see it. So you're going to be fine. So anyway, all right. Well, let's wrap this up, and we'll do one of these again sometime in the near future. And if you have any questions, audiomover.com. There's phone numbers on there. Forms you can fill out to email stuff. I'm not sure if our chat thing is still live, but we've got lots of options to contact us, to text us, and we can answer questions and take care of you. And we're happy to do it. Anyway, there you go. So
have a good day, everybody.
Take care.